Well, hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Masterbooks podcast. Today, I have Kate Hannon. She is the author of so many math resources that so many of you love, including Principles of Math, including Revealing Arithmetic, including so many Masterbooks Academy courses. And she's now released through Masterbooks, the Big Book of Math. Have you seen it yet? It's really incredible, and it is a historical timeline of math, science, and technology. So, hey, check the Moms of Masterbooks Facebook group as well as the Masterbooks app and see how you can have a chance to win a digital copy of the Big Book of Math. I'm so excited for you to learn from Kate about how this works and how you can use it in your homeschool. So, let's get started. Here at Masterbooks, we are dedicated to help you disciple your children and develop a strong faith as a family. With pro-Bible homeschool curriculum and beautiful books that honor God as Creator. We offer online courses to help your family worship and serve God. You will also find morning baskets and devotionals for the whole family. Our mission is ink on paper to touch eternity, and we have been publishing Christian books for this purpose since 1975. Find your pro-Bible homeschool curriculum at masterbooks.com. So, hi, Kate. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's so fun to have you on the Masterbooks podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for working so hard on the Big Book of Math.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here.
You are known in our Moms of Masterbooks group, as well as the Masterbooks app and all the Masterbooks families, as being someone who does such a great job for explaining math and helping people see God and his wisdom and his brilliance in math and how math works in so many different subjects. So we love at Masterbooks to make sure that people understand the life application of every subject and how God can be seen and honored within each one. So I'm excited for everyone to see the Big Book of Math and how it relates to not just math, but science and technology and history. So tell us a little bit about this resource and what you wanted people, especially homeschool families, to have when they have the Big Book of Math.
Well, there's that saying that says a picture's worth 1,000 words, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have written over 1,000 words talking about math and how it's really a tool that helps us describe God's creation and it points us to the Creator. But really, pictures say it that much better. So that's why I am so excited about this, because students are going to see it visually.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at the timeline and you see the different pages, you really see how math truly does connect with different aspects of God's creation, with different fields that a student might be interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's easy to read, and it will let homeschool families really see that math is not just this isolated subject that you're not sure why you're having to learn, but students can see, hey, this is why we're learning what we're learning. And this is how math really is proclaiming God's praises. And they'll do it in a very simple way that can, be soaked in and become a part of how they view math then. So I'm excited about it because I feel like it can help really change thinking about math and change worldview, help students be able to see that God truly did create everything and that math is a part of that creation.
I love that. And I love that there are so many colors in it and there's so much information. Just to give you a glimpse at it, I want to open up a panel. And this is a lot like our Big Book of History, Big Book of Earth and Science, but you can see how gorgeous. For those of you who are listening, we are showing a panel on the video, but you can see how many different areas. This is just a glimpse of one panel, how many different areas that math relates to. And I'm excited for the students who would like to use the excuse of, why do I have to learn math? I'm not going to use this. I have a calculator. I have, whatever. But this shows how many people have used math in so many ways all through history.
And just to kind of piggyback off that, this is trying to show that the first panel here starts with creation, and you can see the 4 different tracks that are used. So throughout, you're going to see science and technology, mathematicians and scientists, world events, and math happening. So you can kind of see at a glance what was happening in the world and how it connects back to what people were discovering mathematically as well.
Right.
Like it said, it starts back here, right in the Garden of Eden, because Adam and Eve were given dominion over the earth. They had to name the animals. That's looking at God's creation, assigning a name to it. In math, we look at God's creation, we assign numbers and symbols to describe it. So it's that same principle of dominion that started right there in Genesis.
That's beautiful. So does the timeline start with Genesis and go all the way to present day?
Yes.
Wonderful. That's exciting. I wish I'd had that because I really didn't understand the application, like why you had to know algebra and geometry, and because I didn't think I would ever use it. But it's not, even if I don't use it very much, the world around me is using it for my benefit, right? So it's
Yes, absolutely. And I wish the same thing. I was brought up in a Christian homeschooling family and saw God in science, saw history as his story, but was really confused over why I even had to do upper level math, because I did not think I was going into a mathematical field at the time. It wasn't until I really saw that math was part of God's creation that it made sense. It's like, oh, now I know why I'm learning X's and Y's. And so my heart has been that no student will leave their math course for the day going, why am I having to study this?
right.
That's no fun to study something you don't even understand why you're doing. And that's what this really does show. And even with the, the color coding is not even on the timeline, but it's throughout. So like here, you can see that this is teal. That means it connects with the teal timeline. So you can really find where on the timeline the extra items are. So like these items here are located on the timeline as well, but you get more information with the pictures up above, but they're all color coded to make that easy to follow.
Awesome. I love how our design team just brings in color and shapes and lines and makes things so exciting and engaging.
They outdid themselves with this. I was so excited when I saw what they were able to come up with.
That's cool. When I was looking through it, I loved finding that math was highlighted in all these different areas, like math in the kitchen, math in medicine, math in aviation, math in the technology that they used in World War I, and math in thermodynamics and in navigation, and music in math, and the laws of motion and gravity and art. So I'd love for you to highlight a few of those things that you added into this timeline for people to understand math, and tell us about maybe some of your favorites that you put in there.
Sure. I really tried to make sure there was something for everybody, because I wanted, whatever the students' interests were, I wanted them to realize that math could help with that. One of my personal favorites as I was going through it was just seeing how math really did impact society, like World War II. There were airplanes now, there was an atomic bomb, all of that came out of research that was done, which we tend to think of as science, but it was really a lot of math being applied to explore conservation that led to things like the atomic bomb. So that was personally very interesting for me as I did my research. Another favorite of mine has been navigation. We read in history about the age of exploration and explorers, and you wonder, well, how did they get from point A to point B? They didn't have computers. They didn't have the GPSs that we have today. Like, how did they navigate? Well, they used the stars and the movement of the heavenly bodies and math to figure out where they were and where they needed to go.
Absolutely. An older gentleman in my family was a quartermaster on a ship in the Navy, probably in the 40s, late 30s, early 40s. And that's what he did. He was in charge of guiding the ship based on the stars, which just blows my mind how somebody could be that smart.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I love that. So how do you see homeschool families using this book within their day?
There are a lot of different ways that you can use it. I mean, even if you just have it as a book on the shelf that students can pull look at, by looking through it, they're going to have their view of math changed, because they're going to see, okay, this is not meaningless. But then you can go so much further with it. So you can As you're studying something in history, you can look up that time period on the timeline, and you can easily see the math that was being used in that time period, and use that to kind of connect math to history. When you're studying science and you're studying some aspect of science, look at when in your science book, when was this discovered? Look at that on the timeline. You can find it by date, and then look at the math that was behind that. Because really, we study them separately, but you can't get a degree in any field of science without extensive math, and they really go hand in hand. And when you separate it out, you end up wondering, why in the world am I studying math? But when you put it together, you see, oh, this is really a tool to help us describe God's creation. So you can do that easily because it is all arranged by that timeline. Just look at whatever time period or whatever you're studying science and find that there. You can also, whenever you're finding yourself just overwhelmed by your math class, or you can see your student is losing interest in math, say, you know what, we're just going to take a day off and we're going to study something from the timeline, and then just pick a panel and look at one of the ideas there. Or the information there, and kind of see, hey, this is why we're studying math. It really is useful. And so it can be like that little booster shot when you're having that slump in math.
I love it. So there's a teacher's guide, or a guide. Maybe it's not necessarily a teacher's guide, but there is a guide. So tell us about that.
Yeah, it's not really a teacher's guide. So when we were designing it, there wasn't space for everything that I wanted to stick on the timeline. There was just so many cool things that I wanted to share, and there's only so much space. So what we came up with was having a separate guide with more details for those who wanted to go further. So on the timeline, and for those listening, I'm showing there's these little let's see if I can get it in there, these little link symbols. And every time you see a link symbol, it means that there's more information in the guide. So if you want to go further and learn more about that, then you would pull up the guide. And so this is page 4. You can see the page numbers are at the top.
Okay.
And the guide is numbered the same way. So it also folds out. So it's not just a regular book, but it folds out like a timeline. And so you would look at page 4, and that's where you'll find the additional information on that topic. Okay, so you'll look for the same title that you were looking at on the timeline, and you'll find more information about that.
That's so neat.
Yeah, so it's more like a go deeper, dive deeper.
Right. And they'll find that in the very back of the actual big book of math, right? There's a pocket, and that's sitting in the pocket waiting for you.
Yes. And I hope that you will use it, because I thought there were some really neat things that there just wasn't space to stick every cool thing on the timeline. So the guide can go right along with that.
I love it. So tell us what your favorite thing, like if you're sitting down with your children, what do y'all enjoy looking at? What are they interested in?
So I have a young son. We're just getting started in homeschooling. But even though he hasn't really mastered addition and subtraction that much yet,
right? Okay,
he's able to look at the timeline and go, "Wow, this is cool. Tell me about this." And obviously, I couldn't read him all of the details. A lot of it was over. But even at his age, he was able to see, okay, math's important. I better study.
Oh, good.
Thing. So I don't know that he has a favorite just yet, but it just to say that I know the timeline's aimed at an older, maybe middle school, high school, but really your elementary students can get that exposure and just not, know all of the details until they get a little bit older.
Right. Yeah. I can imagine this would be a fun resource to just have in the car on a trip and have everybody just talking about something that's interesting to them, or asking questions, doing a quiz, or just studying it to learn something new about maybe where they're going, or what time frame they've been studying in American history, or anything like that.
Absolutely. And it's so visual. Like I just had left it out on the floor, and my son just went and pulled it out, and he's like, "What is this about? What's this about?" Like the pictures draw you into different pieces. And so it can really be something that's just, out there, and students discover as their curiosity leads them. So you can do it in a structured way, like, hey, we're going to look at this time period in this panel, or you can do it in an organic, let the child look at what picture is of interest, and that's what you look at further.
Got it. Well, neat. So you, as I've mentioned before, are so well known for helping people see God in math. And I would love for you to tell us, just kind of rehearse something that's been special to you about that fact lately, something that you want to remind people of, or something new to you that you've discovered.
I'm just going to go to my favorite verse, which if you've heard me talk about math, you've heard me mention a lot of times, but Jeremiah 33:25 and 26 says, "Thus says the Lord, if I have not established my covenant with day and night and the fixed order of heaven and earth, then I will reject the offspring of Jacob and David, my servant." And that's in the ESV. But the fixed order, that's the consistent way creation operates.
Mm,
It includes what we describe with addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, the consistencies of creation. And God saying, look, I've established my covenant with this consistencies that you see, and I'm going to be faithful to my other covenant. He was talking about his covenant with Jacob and David here, what he had promised them. But he's promised us to save us, to take us to heaven,
mhm,
put our faith in Jesus. And math's very existence is shouting out at us that God is a covenant keeping God.
mm,
If he is faithful enough that you can rely on 1 + 1 to equal 2, day after day after day, and we can build airplanes relying on the law of gravity to work the same way. Well, the law of gravity, we write down mathematically, and we rely on it to work day after day after day. If gravity
mhm,
changed, there'd be no way to build an airplane. You wouldn't want to get in it if you did build it, because you wouldn't know if today was one of the days it was going to work or not work.
mhm,
God were like us and constantly changing his mind, that would be the universe, right? But he's not. He's faithful, he's consistent, and he is governing this universe in a consistent and faithful way. And that is a testimony to us that we can trust him. So
mhm.
whatever's going on in your life, he is still in charge. You can look at math and you can go, okay, 1 + 1 still equals 2. My God is still on his throne. He is still in charge. He is still faithful to his promises. He's going to finish the work that he began in me. He is he is that covenant keeping God. It means we better pay attention to what he said. We better come to him his way through faith in Jesus. And then if we have, though, we can walk in that assurance and peace, knowing he really is in charge. And that is the message that math should be shouting out to you and to your children as you study it, is that, hey,
Mm.
I better listen to God and know that he will do exactly what he said he will do in the Bible. And so that's what I hope that as students do read this timeline, there's a lot of comments in there showing worldviews and really trying to help them see, hey, God is faithful and we can trust the Bible and we can trust what he said and we can rest in that, because that changes how we live in every area of life.
Absolutely. Well, I'm fascinated and excited by the timeline. And one thing that I'm really excited about is how the student will be able to both honor God and honor people who are different than them, who were inspired by God and the Holy Spirit to create something using math, which demonstrates who God is. So there's all these different ways to look at the character. Look how God used a human being, a fragile human being who happened to be gifted by God with the way to think, so that they could create this, and how that informed that part of history that this was created and that math was used to do it. It's just an amazing way to see the wonder of God and the wonder of God in people.
Yeah, and it's we're made in God's image, right? So even non-believers have had input into math,
Hmm.
different ways, because we have that image bearing capability. He made us with the ability to
Right.
explore his creation, and so it does. Our very ability to use math really is shouting out that, hey, we are made in his image. We're not animals, and
Hmm.
and and there is a God. But yeah, it is really cool to see their worldviews too. As you go through the timeline, you'll see how their worldview did impact the way that they used math. Like the Greek
Hmm.
mathematicians were not able to go as far with math because of their worldview. They just focused mainly on geometry, and it was their worldview that kind of led to a lot of the darkness in the Middle Ages until that kind of broke through again. So you can kind of see the worldviews at play, and that's highlighted throughout the timeline too.
So fascinating. This will be a resource that I can see people using for decades, just to pull it out and discuss something that God used mankind to do and how it's benefiting us today, or how it's a part of the story, like you just said, of the Dark Ages, and why it was limited in that time, why the light was limited, because they weren't thinking through God's eyes, thinking through God's ways. And I just love it. I love that Masterbooks got to publish it and you got to write it, and that we get to gift it, letting you all employ it in your homeschool and just in your day to day.
Yes, I'm excited. And like I said, picture says 1,000 words. So out of all the resources that I've written, I'm very excited about this one, just because of the pictorial nature and how it
Right.
with people who might be afraid of math. Like my grandfather is not a math person, but when he saw the timeline, he was like, wow, I could actually get into this.
Yeah.
It can really connect with people who might not want to go through a more in-depth kind of resource, because it is just that pictorial.
Right.
picture.
Yeah, like a timeline encyclopedia almost.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Catherine. It's been great to see you and great to talk about your new resource. Thank you for everything you do for Masterbooks family. Thank you all for being a part of today's podcast. Remember to check back in at the Moms of Masterbooks Facebook group, as well as the Masterbooks app, to see how you can win a copy of this timeline, or to ask your questions about it. We have so many people there ready to answer your questions, and we're here to serve you. So have a great day. We'll see you later. Bye-bye. Hey, thanks for joining us today for the Masterbooks podcast. It was really fun to do this with you today. We hope that you'll take a moment and rank and review the podcast wherever you are listening or watching, so that others can find it more easily. We loved having you here, and we look forward to being with you on the next podcast. It comes out every other week, Mondays at 5 a.m. See you then.